when I first met Darryl, and I got his name through Mark, and we met for coffee. And he here's a PhD, and what is your degree in? It's got a long degree.
Bioengineering is my PhD.
But I thought I had a couple more things on it.
I have a chemical engineering undergrad degree.
Undergrad, okay, but it was quite impressive. And then I said, well, how'd you get into this? And he says, well, actually, I started my career as a rock star. He was a rock singer.
It was.
And and what I really found very interesting, I asked the question. I said, well, that was then, and this is now. I mean, that was then, that's now. He says, no, I learned a lot. I learned a lot from my experience you were a singer. That's what you were doing. You went so fast. I don't know if you were playing the guitar or the drums or what.
No,
I
sang. Okay. Yeah. There was one picture from a show here in Frederick in, I don't know, 2000 or 1990? It was a long time. 88? Long time.
I wasn't there.
No.
No. I was still in high school. Yeah, my voice was just changing. I couldn't sing again. So anyway, and I said, well, that's really nice. But what I found really interesting, that's why all the publicity that's been online about this is that, hey, the rock star is what he learned from his rock star days, if I can use that, and how that has not been lost on him starting BioFactura, maintaining BioFactura, and growing BioFactura. So I asked him to kind of share that story because it's interesting how sometimes we look at a part of our career and just push it aside because something's new. But this, I just found that to be intriguing. Excuse me. I found that to be very intriguing. And can you kind of bring us up to date on that?
No, I mean, back when I was in my early 20s, late teens, I was into music, and pretty seriously, back then you got record deals. I don't think they have that anymore, but that's what we were trying to do, and took it down the road pretty far till I was about 25, and that's when made a change and decided that I saw a lot of friends of mine hitting close to 40 and living 4 in an apartment in Hollywood, and I said, I don't know if that's where I want to end up. So I went back and had some good inspiration from my, at that time, future wife. Go back to school, do something.
Yeah, his wife is here, by the way.
She is. Cheryl's here. And so I went back to community college, did about a year and a half there because I'd forgotten everything, of course. I was doing music for since 6 years out of high school. So I had to come back up to speed on everything, math, and I started getting into, and at that time I'd kind of done all my fun and was into school and trying to do the best I could there. So figured out I liked chemistry, and I went to the career center, and I said, well, what does a chemist make if you get a degree? And I was like, oh, well, that's okay. And then I saw a chemical engineer. It was like the next thing, and that made twice as much money. So I was like, maybe that's the one for me, because I could do the math.
Were you saying money was a motivator for you at that point?
Not just that, but I also read chemical engineering was the most hardest degree you could get as an undergrad, and I like that too because I like challenges. So I transferred to University of Maryland and finished up my undergrad degree there. I then. By that time, I was pretty close to 30, so it was a little late, But I had a good advisor, Bill Bentley, who ended up founding the bioengineering department now at University of Maryland, who ended up being my PhD advisor years later. But he connected me with a company in Maryland, a vaccine company called North American Vaccine, and I was able to get a job there, and I have an old colleague, Pete, here, who was there when I was there in those years about...
You still had long hair then?
I did. My hair was still about this long for that whole time.
What do you
And-
mean, when you were in college, you were still done it?
Yeah,
That's
and
cool.
He had a
in
real job.
yeah, even in as a
Getting
real
paid
job.
real money.
Yeah.
Long hair.
Yeah, had
You,
a
you mean you had
ponytail.
long hair and getting paid money?
Well, I had it in a ponytail. I like
Ponytail,
make it
that's
like
good, that's
that.
good,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah, so.
And we used to run together.
We did.
Would,
Yeah.
would a ponytail kind of flap?
I don't know.
Got to ask these questions, they're important,
Yeah.
you know.
So I hopped over to human genome sciences, and that was a big booming time with the dot-com bubble. This was in '80, or when was it? Yeah. It was the bubble burst in, when was it?
I don't know.
2000, right? So it was
around, yeah.
it was going crazy, and I mean, more people were trying to trade their stock options than work at some point there. It was just complete insanity. But as I moved through this career, a couple of things I realized. First thing I realized is I just did not work for other people very well. I was not very good at being managed. I would have hated to manage me back then.
Can I ask a question?
What? Why?
No. I mean, when did you realize that you couldn't work for anybody? Did you? I mean,
Well, I mean, as you
did they tell you?
You spend a couple of years learning the trade, as it were, but then you come up to a level and you expect other people above you to be at that level or above your level, right? And when you start running into people that are just, especially if you get in an organization that's very, it's managed by maybe people that have some issues with self-esteem, or people that want yes men underneath them, that whole kind of thing, at the top of an organization, and that just trickles down through the management, because they'll hire somebody that they don't want to be threatened by, they don't want them to show them up, and that kind of a person, is going to be the same kind of person, so they don't want somebody to, and it just, the competency level just falls as you drop down the management scheme. And, at the time I was at HGS, and I'm not naming names, but, the management above me was a few levels down in that, that cascade. And I just, if somebody's doing the wrong thing or coming up with the wrong idea or whatever, I got to call them out on it. And when you're in a really, in an organization like that with a big structure, it just doesn't work very well to, tell your boss that he's stupid and he can't, just getting fed up.
Yeah, it's not cool.
Yeah. So it ended up that I found some people of like mind there, a group of 4 eventually, that kind of spanned a range of biomanufacturing that we knew how to do. And everybody had their place. Chemical engineers, scientists, mainly technical people. And we all decided that, we could do something on our own. We really did. And so it was kind of an underground thing, wasn't sanctioned by the company or anything. It was the opposite. It was like, kind of a rebellion, that whole thing. So we'd meet, is there somebody in that conference room? We'd tuck away and have some talks and whatnot. I had to recruit somebody that way. I'm like, hey, I didn't even know the guy very well. Hey, here's what we're doing. What do you think? And yeah, I'm on board. So we pulled people together, and we ended up taking about 2 years to do that, to really put together a team. And I started writing the business plan, and it really hooked me into, that it was possible to start something. I thought that you could do it. So how I jumped out, and this is actually, I'm trying to come back long ways to the music days. So kind of like the band thing, finding really talented players is where I was doing in the science thing. I was finding not the drummer, but the purification guy, right? And not the guitarist, but the molecular biology guy that was really good at that. And we ended up with 4 people, just like most of my bands were, was 4 people. And that, could do something together and make something that was really valuable. So that was one thing. And then as we started writing the business plan, it was like when you record, back in the day, when and you recorded a demo tape of your work. Instead of music, it was writing all these ideas down. You know, we had, once we left, ended up patenting some things, so there's like kind of like copyrights. There's a lot of similarities, and to be honest with me, it's the feeling of back, you know, doing something, creating something, you know. And as we finally got out there and started, you know, trying to make it happen, bringing in money, it was just like performing, you know, instead of being on stage in front of maybe some people from Capitol Records or whatever, we're on stage in front of investors or people that we might want to have, you know, strike up some business with. So it's still a show. It's you know, there's a lot that I was able to bring with that to come into, you know, audiences, whatever, and selling what I'm doing, and so I was able to really kind of find that same feeling that I did, that passion that I did back when I was in music, but put it into BioFactura, and you know, over the years we've done pretty well with it.
Yeah, you've been around since 2001.
2003 was when it was incorporated.
Okay.
04 is when I left Human Genome Sciences. So
Okay.
about 15 years in March, I was on my own after leaving. So.
Okay, great. Yeah, see, so learning from a band to that, it's amazing what you can kind of transfer over. And but your hair is shorter. It looks good.
Yeah.
You know.
I didn't want to be a hippie forever. You know, you
can't
get a
be
little
forever.
older.
I know. When we were talking also, you're as a startup, when you're starting out, you face a lot of different challenges. And I kind of just wrote down a few. We talked about a few, and if you can expand upon those.
Sure.
I mean, how do you go? You know, how do you go out and get the right people? I mean, do you look at the resume, and if the resume shines, this is it, or what do you do to get the right people? How do you know you got the right person?
Well, you know, network's important, obviously, as you kind of move through your career, and then if you do something on your own, coming to events, meeting new people, that's, you know, your network, your professional network is the most important thing. It's the, you know, it's the thing that has brought us nearly all of our opportunities, all of our business, all of our people, coming out to events, you know, ended up bringing us investors and also really important people like Dr. Hausfeld here, who I met about 4 years ago at a pitch event when we started raising money, you know, seriously for the first time. So getting out there and meeting people and establishing, you know, relations of trust and of respect, those are the people you can trust to refer the right people to you, you know? So bringing in new employees it's a lot about, okay, I need somebody for, you know, this part of my company. I know who I should talk to, and he probably knows more people and that kind of thing. That said, it's sometimes hard to find the right people, and sometimes you make mistakes and hire the wrong people. That certainly happened through the years as well. I hope I'm getting better at that over the years, because it is hard to do that. And the resume, you know, you mentioned that as well. The resume is, that's like the last thing that I care about on priority. It's about meeting somebody. It's about bringing them in and seeing how they work. But on paper, I've seen resumes for people that are just look like, you know, the god on paper that are just horrible, you know, and you can't believe how bad they are after reading this resume. And then other people who've, you know, just done 2 years at a community college. I got a guy who started with me about 5 years ago, maybe longer. And, you know, I took a chance on him as an intern, and this guy came in, was showing me things, you know, how to do things in the lab. So you just never know where you're going to find great talent. I think I've been pretty good at finding some really early talent, maybe not a lot of experience, but then they've become and have just a huge potential to lead in the company and do really well for us.
Yeah, so it's important to really kind of that whole networking, getting out, and,
Yes.
and just building.
I don't get out enough these days, that's for sure. I'm too busy.
What would you rather, stay behind the desk, or would you rather be out now?
I'd rather be in the lab, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you're being honest. That's good. But you got to get out, though, right?
You do.
You got to get out.
Yeah.
When the biotech industry, when you started in that, it really wasn't as in vogue as it is today. Is that correct?
It was getting there, but it's really exploded.
Yeah.
I think it's gotten bigger and bigger. Doesn't seem to be letting up. There's a lot new. You get to innovation, people coming up with new ideas all the time.
Yeah.
That are doing great things, curing cancer. I mean, if you look back, even 20 years ago, people diagnosed with certain cancers was a death sentence. There was nothing you could do, and now there's so many treatment options and new treatments with things like cell-based therapy that are coming out that were just unimaginable not that long ago. So no, I think it's got, there's a lot of future for this this field, and it's becoming, as far as medicine and pharmaceuticals go, the biggest segment as far as revenue and everything comes in. So it's grown since I've been into it.
When you started out, though, you were new. How did you establish your competitive advantage? What did you put the stake in the ground and say, this is what makes us different? Or did you think about that?
No, we did. So we had 4 guys, as I mentioned, who started the company a little at a time. One guy jumped about 6 months ahead of me. Actually, he got fired, but different story there. I did it a little differently. I had, maybe 3 levels of management above me in a good place with me doing this kind of on the side, and they were kind of like, look, just don't do it on company time, but do what you got to do. So at one point with Human Genome Sciences, I knew a layoff wave was coming, and I knew I'd get a little tiny severance package. I think it was like 2 months of salary, and I knew the time was right. So I went to the guy at the top and I said, hey, it's time to put me on the list. And he was like, are you serious? I was like, yep, put me on the list. So I got laid off on purpose, which gave me a little bit of runway. It was kind of sad. Like, it was a group of about this many people who got laid off that day, and like half of them were crying and all sad. And I'm like in there, let's go, time to go.
So what happened when they saw you?
They were kind of looking at me funny. But a lot of people knew what we were doing, the people at, on the line there. So yeah, we had a couple of months to get it, it was right out onto the tightrope with no net, and we had to start making money really fast. I had no big savings, none of us did. It wasn't like we were, upper level management with $1 million in the bank that didn't have to take salary for 2 years. We were all people who couldn't survive. So there was a lot of motivation there, and still is, but then it was, sink or swim, and, we survived.
So did you go for funding right away, or how did you?
So we kind of laid some groundwork for doing contract work for other companies, and I went back to my my advisor at University of Maryland. There was a facility there called the Bioprocess Scale-Up Facility, and we had no lab of our own, but they were willing to rent us, a bench in that facility a week at a time for like $200. And in that time, we could go in, use their equipment, and do work for other biotech companies and people who needed certain things done that our group was very good at. And so that's how we survived. We would do little contracts, one after another, bring in enough money to keep people's mortgages paid and food and that kind of thing. But eventually, one of the networks, one person within our network worked over at Fort Detrick, and we got into a collaboration with a lab there in biodefense. And that was a big turning point for the company, because we eventually put in for a grant called SBIR grant, and some people have heard of that, called Small Business Innovative Research Grant. And they had a drug in the freezer that had been kind of rotting there for smallpox. And our friend who was a scientist there said, hey, you want to do something with this? And we're like, yeah, of course, we'd love to do that. And we filed for this grant, and we got it, and we started working on that in 2005. We ended up really doing a lot of work on that program for about 5 years, and in 2010, kind of put it on the shelf. The government wasn't interested in funding it further at the time, but we saved it for, it was 2010, for about 9 years now, and now we may have a chance to bring that one back up to the surface, so there's some pretty strong interest again. So persistence and don't give up on something is key to getting a company moving forward, especially in biotech, because it's not like an app where I'm going to flip that thing in a year or two. It's a long road, a really, really long road to whatever that end game is.
Yeah, and you brought that up when we were talking. You said really there are some really keys to success, and one, if we can just expand on persistence a little bit more, what you really mean by persistence from you as it relates to business and your customers, etc.
Yeah. So I think having the personality that you can, get beat down one day and have a problem or a failure, and then kind of go home, go to sleep, but wake up the next morning and say, I bet I can figure this out, and just turn it around really quick. I think that's absolutely essential. If you can't, you got to take a beat, and you got to get back up and do it again. So persistence is, there's no other way to make that happen.
You dust yourself off and
oh yeah,
start
and
all
that's
over
still
again.
that happens wherever you are, I think. The other thing is
Flexibility.
yeah, flexibility. And you asked me, did we put a stake in the ground? So about a year after we started the company, we had an idea cooking for a way to manufacture biopharmaceutical drugs. And so we did file patent in 2005 on that. And that invention eventually became the base of the grant for the biodefense drug, the smallpox drug. And during those 5 years, we developed that system into something that was commercially viable. And that took a lot of time and effort. But luckily, the government funded that to enhance the capability of the biodefense for the war fighter, in this case with Fort Detrick. So we created this thing for this biodefense opportunity, but later on, we identified something new with it. It's called biosimilars, which are generic biologics. So these are generic drugs to things like Humira, Stelara, some of the ones you see on the TV all the time. All these are biotech drugs. And our system ended up being the best system to manufacture these generic biologics, these biosimilars. So about 7 or so years ago, we really saw this interesting opportunity where we had this thing that we built for a completely different reason that was super competitive in this one area. And we didn't plan for it, but we were able to, keep an eye out for opportunity and find something where we had a big competitive advantage there.
Yeah. So you didn't give up on something, but you found another alternative for it. Is that right?
Right.
And then the last thing on here is innovation.
Well, that is the for what we do, you've got to have, patents important, but coming up with creative solutions to problems that need to be solved, and we do that all the time, and that's what. I'm a chemical engineer, so problem solving is what I was taught. And most of the people I surround myself with are those kinds of people. Run into a problem, figure a new way to solve it, and sometimes that ends up being something patentable, and then you can use that as a competitive advantage because you create that barrier to others coming in and doing it. So we've filed multiple patents after the initial one. We also in-license patents that others have invented. So we have several, in the biodefense arena, we have several patents that we've in-licensed exclusively. So it's as if they were our own. And you can do that with even private companies. That's sometimes a little more expensive that way. But, collaboration, surrounding yourself with very smart people who have all kinds of different complementary strengths is the way to make something move.
But how do you, I'm just kind of sitting back here, if you're a 1 or 2 person shop, how do you maintain that?
Well, when I landed in FTSE, was about 6 years ago, it was under some tough circumstances. We had, we actually had our own lab down in Rockville with maybe 6 people, and the whole company was dependent on one government grant. It was a big one. It was $1 million a year, and I had gone through that first year, but I had a whole year and $1 million ready to go. So I didn't think about raising any more money or any backup plan. I'm like, I got that grant. And that was the year of sequestration, if you remember the sequester. And that's when the government decided they were just going to cut all kinds of funding across the board. So one day I go to my monthly meeting and they're like, yeah, that was a great report, Darryl, but we've got some bad news. You got cut, so stop working. And by the way, you remember that $300,000 we put in the bank, for the next 3-4 months? You need to be writing a check back for that and go find something else to do. So tough times. This is the persistence thing. So we had a little bit of money, and we had actually just started in the biosimilars thing, but it took us maybe 8-9 months to get a deal in place. And by the time that happened, I live up here in Frederick. I was commuting to Rockville, and it was down to me. And I said, if it's just me holding onto the thread, I'm bringing it up here. And I knew about FTSE, and so we ended up bringing the lab up here. And right at the end of the year, we got a deal done. And then the next year, we got a couple of grants, and everything came back up. But yeah, down to 1 person. Well, I had David. He was my intern, but he was unpaid. So that was the guy I brought in from Hagerstown Community College, my star. He came in that fall, and it was me and David. And you wouldn't believe what we did, just 2 people. You can't even imagine it. It's amazing.
You miss those days?
No.
One thing about you, you're honest. It's really true.
It's fun looking back at those days.
It's fun, but the thing is that you learn from them. You just don't file them away and say, poor me.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket. That would be the big lesson there. We had everything on this one government contract or government grant, and that was a bad thing to do. So I learned that, and now we have basically three different places that we bring cash into the company from, and they're all independent of each other. And so if something dries up there, we've got something else to draw from, and we won't be in that position again.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
tough lesson though.
It is tough, isn't it? And you got to keep that smile on your face, even in those times, don't you? You also, knowing you like I know you, even though, is that excellence is very important to you. And you're not smiling.
Oh, I'm thinking about it.
Thinking about. No, but you were talking about how important excellence is, and I imagine in your industry and what you're doing, excellence is. I mean, you don't have room for error. But how do you maintain excellence and motivate excellence? How do you define excellence?
Well, with the
we all want to be excellent in what we do. We always want to be the best of what we do.
Yes. So, even now we have a company of almost 15 people, but that's not a big company. So everybody is ultra important, every single person. So no matter what you do, you've got to do it right. There can't be a weak link in our company chain. If you have a company like, I won't know, like Emmoins or something, then there's like 2,000 people or whatever, you can tolerate a little bit of whatever, non-optimal performance. But for us, it's got to be just dead on all the time. That said, we still want to have fun and, have a good place to work, and no, there's always stress. I was going to say no stress, but we try to get the right stress in, that we want to solve a problem, and we certainly, will go in and make it worth people's while. Like I had one interview, when I get in an interview, for somebody, I really, I try to scare them away. I say, look, this is, if you want technical support and your instrumentation breaks down, I'm going to give you a screwdriver and say, yeah, fix it, open it up. We don't have technical support, we kind of do now. But the point being is I want people that are, people that come in and they fix their own problems. And I'll see some people in an interview and you can tell right away they're just like, oh my God, no, that guy's not going to work out. Or, we had a chemical engineer we brought in about a year ago, and when I did that, actually Dr. H and I were interviewing her, and when we did this kind of scare thing, it was funny. She was like, that sounds good, She was like on it. I was like, there she is. And so, we've kind of figured out how to identify people that have the right attitude at least, But you still make mistakes, and we work with a lot of personalities. We've got people that are just cheerful and crazy all the time, and we have people that are very, reserved and introverted, and try to make them all work together to get the job done.
Yeah, just think if you had a whole group of just happy people.
I don't know.
Yeah. Just think if you had a
That'd
group
be annoying.
Just think if you had a group of
Like,
all
"Shut up."
introverted people.
No, that wouldn't be good either.
Yeah, so
It's a good blend.
It's a good blend. It's the
a good
blending all of these
Yes.
different types of people, right?
Yes,
But then the key thing, though, is that you got to lead it and you got to manage them,
that's right.
and
yeah.
then you can't let the other one take over the other one.
Well, I tell people in my team, you've got to earn everybody else's respect. And that's how you build trust in a team, is that everybody has to respect everybody else, whatever they do, Because without that, you can't follow, you can't lead. It just doesn't work if you don't have any respect for somebody. So, for me, that comes a lot back to capability, technical expertise, quick, I'm kind of tough about that, but
Yeah, you just made me think of so. You said a key word to me, and that is trust.
yep.
I've been in this dealing with this whole issue in organizations in my own career, developing in that. How do you establish trust in your organization? What is it that you do? What do they do? Because trust, believe me, is hard to get. And it's difficult and it's easy to lose.
It is, and it's hard to give too. For me, when I started it, I kind of want to always do everything. That's just one of my negative.
It's an improvement opportunity. It's not negative.
It is, and so letting something go, knowing that it might fail because I'm not doing it, is tough for me sometimes. But you can never scale up anything if that's the way you run things. So I think over just the last few years that we've started to expand the number of people, I think I've gotten better at that, giving people a leadership opportunity, like it's your baby, run it. And the people I've done that with, it's been good response. They've taken charge of it, they have ownership of it, and I let them run it. I don't micromanage them. If I chip in, if I see something that's obviously going off the rails, I'll say, hey, wait a minute, come back. But yeah.
But it's risky though once you give up that control.
It's taken me a long time to get to the point where I can really give that over to people.
So you have an improvement opportunity.
Continually.
Well, again,
Yes.
You're such an honest person, Doctor. Got another question here on this success and ongoing your business. How do you plan success in the short and long term? I know your projects take a long time to come to fruition, but how do you start to have an idea now, know it's not going to pay off maybe for years from now? How do you manage that? How do you work with that when it's that far out?
Well, in biotech, grants play a big role in the early days of the company. That's the people that are going to fund you. You're not going to run to a venture capital fund and expect them to write you a $20 million check for the first round of funding. Companies do start that way, but they're usually not people that haven't done that before, or people that are way up the food chain than from where I started something. So, I'm not even going to get an appointment with somebody like that. But if you go into a government agency, which we did with the DoD and we've done with NIH, with a really sound scientific idea that solves a problem, that's where, in my business, you can gain some early traction and get funding in that you don't have to give away, 90% of your company, which you, even if you got the attraction of a venture capital list earlier, that's what you're going to do. So why'd you even start it? So grants, also back when I started it, Maryland funding in the state, the county, the city was instrumental. I mean, we got TEDCO money. That's an organization that funds a lot of technology and biotech. I got every dollar out of that organization that I could. And others, I think our first grant was from the county of Montgomery County because we were down there. So there's a lot of state and local support that you can go after as a startup company that, that can get you those $25K or, with an SBIR award, it's $150,000 for 6 months. That's enough to keep things going with a couple of people and a good idea. And those, if you go to phase 2, with our biodefense drug, we started at $100,000. Then we got a little $50,000 thing. Then we got like a $750,000 thing for 2 years. So kind of, and then back then they had earmarks, and I went down and learned how to lobby Congress, and I was able to get a couple of earmarks thrown in. So it was a couple $1 million in there. So creativity.
Creativity.
Yeah.
Oh, how do you lobby Congress?
Just go down there and fill out a form, and they give you the money. That's how it works.
That's it? Well, I gotta go. I'm gonna take off and see before they close.
No, seriously, back then, I'm not kidding, that's how you did it for defense. And back then we had Barbara Mikulski, who represented Maryland, Senator of Maryland. Yeah. She was the lead in appropriations for DOD. So if she liked your project, you're going to get the money. Now, that doesn't happen anymore because earmarks are kind of taboo. But back then, I went down there, and they were like, here's this form, put your project on it, put it in, and it was probably some good luck there too, but we got it, so you never know.
Yeah, it's a never know business.
Oh, yeah.
So, we will be opening up to questions here in a little bit, but I have, what does the future look like in what you do? I mean, as you look at it today, and as you see out there, what do you see? What is the challenges? What do you see as the things that you got to be aware of? Where are the potholes? What are the things that keep you up? Does anything keep you up at night?
All the time.
Okay.
But personnel, people is always the biggest challenge. Hiring the right people as you expand the company. There's nothing more important because, I have lots of really cool toys at the lab, and I love them. I love all those little toys and gadgets. Dr. H knows because I'll be like, hey, here's a new toy. He's like, how much does that cost? It's a really important toy. No, we have great, technology, but if you don't have the right people to run those awesome machines, it's just never going to get you anywhere. So people is for me, that's the biggest thing that I think about all the time. We've finally, and it's taken us 15 years, gotten to a point where what we've created over a long period of time is valuable to investors, maybe to other larger companies, definitely to the government in some ways. So we have something that's valuable that people want to buy. And so that's a good thing. I think we've gotten over some hurdles there where, as I said, I have different ways to bring money into the company, and I think, if one fails, another will pick up. So there's a lot more security, but there's always, you always worry about things. Patents are good. We filed patent in 2005. It took to 2011 for our first patent to issue in the US, so it took a long time to get the first patent issued. And then we just got the last international patent granted from that original filing, 2005, last year. So it took, how many years is that? 14 years to get a patent allowed. And they only last 20 years. So we got 6 years of time left. Now, luckily, it's a good point in time for that technology, and we filed other patents that come to back it up. But continually getting that intellectual property surrounding you, protecting you from competition as you become more competitive and more in a not just a little company doing grants, but competing with bigger companies, you kind of have to think about that.
Yeah. Do you still have your business plan that you wrote, whatever?
Yeah, I think it's in a box somewhere in the garage.
It doesn't belong there. It's got to be on your desk. No, do you?
I think I have like, revision number 175.
Okay, that's the point. The
now.
point is, though, that the business plan helps drive
It does. It
the
does.
business.
And it's updated, probably 10 times a year.
And when you're involved in developing the plan, I mean, do you do it by yourself? Do you involve your people? I mean, how do you?
That's one thing I tend to like to keep to myself a little bit. I do farm that out a little bit, but I like writing a document that has some, kind of a story, kind of leads you to a conclusion. That's just how I write. So it's kind of hard to break that one up. So I usually end up writing, once I write something, I have everybody revise it, look at it, critique it, all of that. But I like to write the business plan. Yeah.
Because it lets you kind of understand about your business too, right?
It's telling the story.
Good. Well, that was quite a story. And I would like to do right now, I'm sure with this austere group up there, there's got to be some good questions out there for yes, Mark?
Of course.
Yes.
I had the good fortune of meeting Darryl at a FITSE event. They were called Lunch and Learns. And they bring in supposed experts from the community who would expound on something. In my case, I was promoting private equity investment through Mid-Atlantic Angels. And so my question really is, that Darryl came up to me after I'd done this little briefing and says, hey, we need to talk. And the question is, what brought you to the point, Darryl, where you said, okay, I'm ready to get some investors in here because I want to go to another level?
That's a good question because that took a long time. There'd been a couple of times I had gone out there to see if the investment thing was going to happen, but I learned eventually that my time was better served getting grants, getting government money. But there was a point in time when the biosimilars thing came along that I could see a big market opportunity, billion-dollar kind of thing. And we had, at that time, our patents had been issued in the U.S. that supported the opportunity. And there was a point where I truly believed that if I went up and talked to people that I didn't know or didn't know me, that I could attract them to write a check for me. And I don't know, it's hard to put your finger on when that time is right, but for me it was the patents, it was the opportunity, it was how competitive I thought we were in this specific area. Like biodefense, I've been doing that for a long time, but investors don't invest in biodefense, and why would they? I can get the government to pay for that. So this was a commercial opportunity, a global opportunity, and I thought it was worthy of pitching to investors. And it was.
Yeah.
Darryl,
Joe.
when you start a company, you always keep in your back burner the exit strategy, and you're in an industry that is right now, every day you read about different pharmaceuticals being bought out or merged. Is that a possible scenario for you to, is that one of your exit strategies to possibly be bought out in the near future?
Sure.
Did you know that?
My wife's like, damn straight. She's been with me a long time. So, of course, but I don't like to build it for that. I think you build it for, and it's funny, with the biosimilars is a good example. We had this manufacturing system, and the first thing we said was, well, let's not get any investors. Let's just get a company, a bigger company, to give us a license, for us to license it to them to build one of their products. We give them a list of, hey, here's all the things we can make better than anybody in the world. Do you like any of them? Yes. Check one. And if so, hire us to build the part that we do, and then once you like it, you take it down the road and sell it and give us some little piece along the way. And that was actually the deal that saved the company when it was down to me and the one intern. We got a deal just like that. But then I stepped back and looked at that and I said, well, you know, over like a 15-year time horizon, I'm going to make like $3 million doing that. So that's not the big win for the company. So I started thinking, well, what if this is where risk comes into play. What if I take it further and then get a deal with a big company, maybe after phase 1 clinical trial? So I've taken a product, not just my system, my platform, but I've taken a product and gotten it through some risky hurdles with the FDA. Then I have something that has been really de-risked. What's that worth? And we saw, you know, this is actually when I met you, is I had seen some deals that were happening, and those were like $200-300 million deals, a lot better than the $2 to $3 million deals. But I needed to raise some funds to take our own things to that point, and we did. But then, you know, a couple of years ago, after we've done that, and Dr. Hausfeld sitting here is my largest private investor, who also then ended up joining the company full-time as the chairman of the board and chief medical officer, and is with me all the time, and we're an awesome team. We started thinking, you know, people say, oh, you're taking a drug through phase 3 clinical trials into market, it costs, you know, $100 billion, you know, all untoward money. But for a biosimilar, which is this generic drug, if you really look at it and you know what you're doing, you might be able to get it there for like $20 or $30 million. And that's something we could possibly raise. So right now we're exploring, instead of selling it off at this point, which we still may do, if the right deal comes in, we would certainly consider that. But we're also positioning it to take it all the way to commercial. And I think doing that gives you more strength when you get a deal possible at phase 1 or something. You're not, okay, we're to phase 1, we're out of money, but we want to sell this. That's not what you want to do when you come to the table with Pfizer or one of the big players. They'll be like, oh yeah, we'll give you, you know, $5 million for that. That's a big jump from 2, right? So I think planning to take something much further than maybe you end up taking it, that's how I think about exit. But there's a lot of potential exits along the way. I don't just fixate on one, though.
Some other questions? Yeah.
Hi, Darryl. I'm Catherine, and I deal a lot with.
That sounded like Alcoholics Anonymous. By the way, welcome, no, just kidding.
What was that? What was that?
I've never been there, but I've seen it on TV.
Okay, this is you know, welcome to AA meeting.
I deal a lot with manufacturing and increasing production and stuff. Is there anything that you guys do that's unique with how you manufacture?
Well, sure. Absolutely. I mean, our base, you know, our platform is patented. It's got novel selection strategy, if you know how to build a cell line, so that's patented. We've filed patent on expanding that to make higher productivity cells. We've got a lot of trade secret involved in how we develop the cells and scale them up. So yeah, over 15 years, we've either filed a lot of patents or kept them in, you know, ones that we didn't think we could protect very easily, kept them as trade secrets. So yeah, there's a lot of novel stuff that we do. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Do you ever do tours?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I like showing off. We built a facility about 2.5 years ago when we graduated from FITSE. It's in Frederick. And it can do it it's about 5,500 square feet, but in that little footprint, we can go from concept of a new drug on paper to all the way through process development, scale up, and clinical manufacturing in a clean room in the center of the facility for phase 1 and maybe phase 2. So we can do like everything that a much larger company can do in a really small little space. Yeah.
Did we just contact you and
Sure.
sign up, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can send me a note.
Can you comment on, you suggested that you might be thinking about taking something commercial. So it's a huge mountain to climb to get from phase 2 to commercial. How do you expect to do that?
So what we've thought about is building a facility. One of the things I've tended to do, and it probably gets back to my weakness of not wanting to give up,
Can we go
It's
from weakness
mine.
to improvement opportunities?
Well, I'll show you that this weakness is maybe an advantage. There's a lot of what they call virtual companies out there, companies that start up and they don't have any lab space, but really smart people, and they outsource all of the different things in the lab and manufacturing to contractors. And we do actually contract services for some of those kinds of companies. That's one of my cash lines, is doing work for others that we still do. But for our products, I've seen that having a contractor do it is just super risky. I mean, they don't care about it. They're just doing it for the buck. Not, I shouldn't say that, but the point being is that I just don't trust many people at all. And so we've built the capability in our facility to do almost everything. And so for scaling it up and doing phase 3 or commercial, we're probably looking to build out a facility with larger scale bioreactors and really build a commercial scale facility here. The good thing is we have revenue. We may have some things with the government starting. So we're in a little different position where we don't have to just do an equity round for like $30 million and dilute everybody to death. We can maybe look at other ways of funding that, including some of the government work we're looking to do, that all build something that we can then push into taking one of these biosimilars to market. And it is about bringing in those right people to lead that effort, and I'm starting to do that. I'm tapping people from back at HGS days and whatnot.
So you have to have an appreciation for market size for these biosimilars.
You do.
What your actual, how many doses you're going to have to produce.
Yep.
And that sets your scale.
Yep.
Do you feel that you can do this without having to build a facility like Metamucil?
I do, and I think that with the expression level we get out of our system and with single use and how you can, instead of scaling into these monster 20,000 liter reactors, can just do multiple 2,000s, that if we get the right facility where we may start with a train with 2Ks and then 4 and then 6, as the market, exactly, as the market, because we're not going to, it would be great if we launched the product and got half the world market and needed that, but that's probably not going to happen. So it's probably going to be an incremental build out, but replicated so that the process stays consistent as we expand it. That's the current thinking. We're not sold that we're even going to do this yet, but we're thinking about it.
Are you worried about it being exposed to the regulatory agencies?
I mean, we already are. We're doing phase 1 GMP work right now, so we do everything. I mean, they don't. Unless we go to Europe. If you do a phase 1 trial in Europe, you do get audited. And so I'm kind of preparing for that as well. So that's part of the game. I mean, I've got nothing to hide, right? Not at all.
Well, one more question, Sage, and then we're going to...
Yeah, so I didn't understand half of what you just said over there. So
That's okay.
I know you lived in a different world there, but your start days of what you're doing now, if you could go back in time and sort of say something, what would be your biggest lessons learned that you've learned over the years that you've struggled with, that you wish you could go back and tell yourself when you're starting, that could have maybe helped the path easier, or made things easier along the way?
As in starting this company?
Absolutely.
Yes. So when we started, we were 4 very happy guys, and we're going to conquer the world. But, people change, right? And people's interests can diverge. So you may start a company with partners, but you need to somehow plan for what if this guy's not happy or you're not happy with him. What do you do? And so when you're locking in, when you're starting your structure, ownership, gets into all of that, it's hard to plan for the point where I'm the last of the 4, so I'm the only one left. There's 3 others. And trust me, if we do really well, they're going to get paid big time. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that, no doubt. But something I wish I'd have thought a little bit more about how that could unfold, the what ifs. But when you're starting something, what do you do? You're just kind of caught up in it all. So that's one thing, but live and learn, right?
Okay. Well, I think we'll all like give you a hand. Darryl. I wish you would have showed more of those tapes. I really loved seeing those. I was waiting for those. So anyway, thank you so much.
Sure.
Darryl.